Whew, I think I might have eaten too much. It's been so long since we last had Sharon's cooking. She hasn't lost her touch. None of it feels heavy on my stomach at all. Well, that's all my work done for the day. Maybe I should go see how everyone else is doing.
You can explore Class 7's dorms on the night before each free day. Beware, however, that the story will progress should you return to Rean's room. So before I jump in here, I just wanted to point something out. I don't think I mentioned before, but they kind of hinted at it, and I don't know if they ever specifically say it, but basically what's going on is while you were away that month in Crossbell, the rest of the class decided that they were going to cram a whole extra year somehow, their whole second year somehow, in their learning for the last month of school or whatever. And so even though we spent 3 months without school, and then like it doesn't make sense to me, but somehow they're all graduating this year. So you are not going to, though. You're going to stay for one more year like you should for the extra year, but they're all graduating and leaving. So this is it. This is the end of Class 7. Like, it's over for everybody. So
here's Crow's room. I think I'll stay away from it for now. I feel more like going around and talking to everyone. Hey, Machias! Working hard or hard?
I'll stop you right there. Of course I'm hard at work. Just look at the size of this book. If I can't internalize as much of it as possible while I'm here, I'm doomed to failure from the start.
And this is one of your new textbooks? Man, Heimdall's political academies don't mess around, do they? You'll be the youngest person there, right?
Most likely. I'd normally need to have graduated from Thor's with a bit more experience under my belt to have gotten in. There are a few Thor's grads there already, though. They take some every year. And as you might imagine, the recent political upheaval has the place swarming with applicants this year. The entrance exam was hard enough on its own, but that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Can't say I envy you. Still, I know you're going to be just fine. You're so smart that you can handle any subject they throw at you. Growing up with your dad should give you a leg up on the politics, too.
Yeah, no pressure there. Honestly, there are times when I think diving into things head first like this is a giant mistake.
What's wrong?
Oh, it's nothing. It's just, I know we're probably going to both be really busy with our own lives come spring, but let's make time to have lunch together once in a while or something, okay? Studying is all well and good, but even I need a change of pace every now and again.
I think that can be arranged. The train from here to Heimdall only takes a half hour. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't hang out sometimes.
Then it's a date.
Something on your mind, Eustace?
For the first time in a long time, no. I'm just taking a short break. Looking over an endless sea of documents can be rather tiring on the eyes.
Oh, are those the tax reports you mentioned?
Ordinarily, this would be my father's work, but His Majesty has yet to decide his fate. Rufus hasn't so much as glanced in Berea Hard's direction since he took his new job in Crossbell either. As such, the task falls to me.
Man, I knew everyone in our class had it pretty rough right now. You've got it roughest, no contest.
If my ego had its way, I would boast that filling in for my father is a simple and mundane task. But on top of the paperwork, I'll need to manage the provincial army and oversee the province as a whole. Then there's the matter of keeping the most stubborn of the nobility in check. I don't expect the first 6 months to be pleasant.
The fact that you're already thinking 6 months ahead is pretty impressive as it is. Standing in for Duke Alberea like that must take some real confidence. I know you'll manage, though.
That much is obvious.
What is it?
It's nothing. In the days to come, more people will be relying on you than ever before. But no matter who does so or what they ask, do not lose your pride as a noble. Act independently, your head held high. Maintain your pride and your autonomy, and I'm sure you'll be fine.
Thanks. I promise I will.
I'll hold you to that.
Oh, good evening, Master Rean. I thought you had already retired for the evening. How would you like for me to put together some supper?
I appreciate the offer, but I think I've eaten more than I should have as it is. Your cooking really is delicious, Sharon. I was starting to miss it after not having it for so long.
It was my pleasure to cook for all of you again, so I pulled out all the stops with this one. Seeing all of you happily indulging my handiwork always makes every second of preparation worth it. Is something the matter, Master Rean?
Oh, I was just thinking about how you haven't changed a bit. I'm not sure it's my place to ask, but is everything all right over at Ouroboros? I can't help but wonder after how things turned out. Vita seemed really shocked.
I'm afraid I haven't a clue. No word of what's been happening in the society has reached my ears since then. I have no idea where the second Anguis is now. Nor do I know what happened regarding the Phantasmal Blaze plan after the Chancellor declared he was taking it over. And quite frankly, none of it is my concern. The answers won't change who I am, and it won't suddenly cause me to shift priorities. I am and always will be a proud maid of the Reinford family. Not because of the freedom we enforcers are granted, but because that is simply who I am. Much like how you being the Ashen Chevalier doesn't change how you are also a proud member of Class VII.
I suppose you're right.
And no matter what happens to you in the future, never lose sight of who you really are. It's almost time for me to return to Ruhr. But should you ever need me again, I will gladly rush to your side.
Thank you, Sharon. I'm glad you can stay here for a while longer.
All of the black records in the notebook were updated. The gods of creation before Septian calendar. In the beginning, there were two great gods. One boasted unrivaled courage, the other unparalleled fortitude. They descended from the heavens with their kin, and it was upon the dark land below that they first met. Calamity. Their opposing natures incompatible, the two were drawn irresistibly into battle, and thus began a struggle that shook heaven and earth. The goddess and the spirit's laments were for naught. As the land quaked, the skies were torn asunder, and the gods' kin could only tremble in fear. After what seemed like an eternity, their clash came to an end, but it was an end of mutual defeat. Their power spent, the empty shells of the two celestial titans were flung into the furthest reaches of the dark land, and all that remained in their wake were terrible, their kin, and the great power. "200 years after Heimdall was first founded, Ruin rose on monstrous wings from the depths of the earth. Its name was Zoro Agruga, the dark dragon. A malevolent creature of terrible power, it spread a miasma throughout the capital that turned Heimdall into a city of the dead. But the horrors did not end there. The evil dragon desecrated the corpse of the fallen, taking control of their bodies and using them to attack those who remained alive, further increasing the legions of the dead. The emperor at the time, Astorios II, was forced to flee the city with what remained of his household and citizens. Together they retreated south and established a new capital in the land of Saint Ark. Through 100 years and 6 more emperors, the bane of Heimdall went unchallenged. It was the 7th Hector I who resolved to recapture the city. Time had proved an ally to the beast, however, and the dragon's influence spread over the surrounding area like a plague. Undaunted, Hector I led an army of brave knights into the necropolis in an attempt to free it. But though their hearts were steadfast, their arrival was met by legions of powerful fiends, and their efforts seemed doomed to end in failure. It was then that Hector I had a fateful encounter with none other than the great Vermilion Knight, Testarossa. The knight recognized Hector I as its master, and bolstered by its immense power and countless weapons, the Emperor moved once again onto the city and to the decisive encounter with the Dark Dragon. The battle shook the city to its core, and at the end, the Vermilion Knight was victorious. The Scourge of Heimdall, the Dark Dragon, was defeated. However, the price of victory was steep. The corrupted blood that flowed from the dragon claimed Hector's life and defiled even the knight itself, placing a curse upon it. The noble Testarossa became the Crimson Calamity, a demon with 1,000 weapons that only reacts to the blood of the Arnor family, a destructive force on par with the dark dragon that, should control of it ever be lost, would threaten the world and all who live in it. It was sealed deep underground, never intended to again see the light of day. Meanwhile, a new city rose from the ashes of the old, and people once again began to gather in Heimdall. And that was when the Vermilion capital that endures to this day was first built. In the year 947, Emperor Valius V passed away. His death heralded the beginning of the largest scale civil war in Erebonian history. Valius V was a ruler with a somewhat debaucherous reputation, and is said to have had countless wives and concubines. To further complicate the matter of succession, many of those wives came from prestigious noble families, all of whom began competing for power and wanted their offspring to take the throne. Within days of Valius V's death, Crown Prince Manfred, the son of his first wife, was assassinated by an unknown party. Following the death of the Crown Prince, the fourth prince and son of the first of Emperor Valius' secondary wives, Prince Orthos, seized the capital by force. Once in control, he declared himself the new emperor and began purging all those who dared to oppose him. The coup set off a succession of counterclaims, and 3 other princes also named themselves to be the new emperor. Backed by the powerful noble families of their mothers, the competing princes ignited a bloody 5-year-long civil war, and thus the War of the Lions began. At first, the princes' armies were largely equal in terms of strength. It wasn't until Orthos, who would later come to be known as the False Emperor, revived the being that had long been sealed under the city, that the balance of power shifted. The Testarossa, the legendary Vermilion Knight, now tainted by the blood of Zoro Agruga, saw the light of day once more. With its unmatched strength under his control, Orthos decimated his greatest competition in one fell swoop, and the 5th prince, Gunnar, was defeated. It seemed inevitable that the armies of the other princes would share the same fate, but it was at this pivotal point that the war took yet another surprising and sudden turn. This unexpected development came in the form of another great knight, the Palatinate Knight. The famed champion was acquired by Prince Lucius, the 6th and youngest of the feuding brothers, and with its power he was able to defeat the army of the brilliant strategist and second Prince Albert. Victorious and backed by the knight's power, Prince Lucius was poised to challenge Orthos. Prince Gunnar and Albert's armies, however, were not completely wiped out, and decided to join forces with one another in order to oppose the other princes. It was thus that the war became one fought by 3 separate groups: Prince Orthos with the Vermilion Knight, Prince Lucius with the Palatinate Knight, I don't know what Palatinate color is, and Princes Gunnar and Albert, who had no knight, but compensated with their sheer numbers. The War of the Lions had been raging for 2 years now, and the chaos only worsened by the day. Erebonia seemed fated to fall into ruin and darkness, fitting perhaps for the nation that takes its name from Erebos. What does Erebos mean? I'm gonna have to look some stuff up, I think. A young man lays on a grassy plain, enjoying a nap in the peaceful setting. Before long, however, his rest was interrupted by the arrival of a second young man on horseback. The youth wore the trappings of a knight, and his expression was deathly serious. His armor bore many rents and scratches, and his left arm was bound in a bloody bandage. The first young man had not seen him in several years, but a cheerful reunion did not seem to be his purpose. "You are right after all," the second man said gravely. "At this rate, the Empire's days are numbered." At this, the first young man rose from the grass. He was none other than the 3rd prince of the Erebonian Empire, Prince Strykles. As a man with no claim to the throne due to his commoner mother and shunned by the other highborn princes, Strykles had long since left Erebonia behind, wandering from place to place and whiling away his days. 3 years prior, he had reached the land of Nord, where he had remained ever since. Though left to his own devices since childhood, his nature was noble, and he was quickly accepted by the people of Nord and lived peacefully among them. But while he had left his homeland, he had not truly abandoned it in his heart. During his wanderings, his mother had passed away, but while she lived, she had told him something that would remain with him for the rest of his days. "The blood flowing through you will not allow you to turn your back on the Empire's suffering." Prince Strykles had turned those words over in his head again and again. What could a powerless vagrant like himself truly hope to do? The knight's arrival, however, signified two things: that the war continued to worsen, and that Erebonia was on a certain path to ruination. His mother was probably correct. Hearing the knight's words, he decided that enough was enough. He could ignore the pain of his countrymen no longer. That knight, incidentally, was called Roland. He was a childhood friend of Dreikel's and his confidant. He was also the man who Dreikel's had left in charge of things in his place before leaving the country. Prince Dreikel set about preparing to depart, but before he could finish, he was met by several of the tall knights of Nord, their cross-shaped spears in hand. They too were close friends of Dreikel's, and they volunteered to accompany him and Roland, fearing the two men alone would not stand a chance. The next morning, the prince departed the village, a mere 17 men under his command. He bade farewell to the people of the settlement, and its elder wished them well. May the winds and the goddess be with you, he blessed them. Fortune favor you all. Prince Dreikel's opponents were the armies of 4th Prince Orthos and his Vermilion Knight, 6th Prince Lucius and his Palatinate Knight, and the combined forces of the remaining princes, Gunnar and Albert, who had a legion of magical golems under their control. Yet it was he, the illegitimate son of a commoner and latecomer to the war, who emerged triumphant. His victory did not come without losses, however. During his return to Erebonia, Roland fell in battle. Not long after that, however, he met a woman who would change his destiny forever. That woman was none other than the daughter of Count Sandlot, who hailed from the lakeside town of Legram. Her charismatic personality and peerless skill with the lance earned her the leadership of a band of knights known as the Eisenritter, and the moniker Lance Maiden. Her name was Leanne Sandlot. Prince Dreikel's and Leanne Sandlot may have come from wildly different backgrounds, but their concern for the innocent victims of the war united them in purpose to bring an end to the bloodshed, and it was those shared feelings that made them join forces. The two of them, along with the warriors of Nord, the Eisenritter, and all of the other peoples of the nation whose hearts they moved, liberated one town after another, and were eventually successful in persuading even Prince Lucius, owner of the Palatinate Knight, to fight for their cause. At the same time, however, the false emperor schemed to elevate the cursed Vermilion Knight to even greater power, to godhood, and thus the Vermilion Apocalypse was created. The demonic god emerged in Heimdall alongside a monstrous castle and vanquished the approaching armies of Albert and Gunnar in a single battle. Their end was anything but conventional, however. They were simply erased from existence. Even the Palatinate Knight could not contend with such a foe and was felled. And as it decimated all who challenged the false emperor, countless crimson spirit veins spread out from the castle, stealing the very life from the capital citizens, as well as those in the surrounding area. Kind of like what happened to us in the game. Defeat seemed all but inevitable for Prince Dreikel's, the Lance Maiden, and their followers, but they refused to give up. Following the guidance of a kindly witch, they were led to a new great knight which slumbered on the outskirts of Heimdall. After overcoming a trial, they were able to claim the Ashen Knight and its power. With it in hand, along with their many supporters and the army of Prince Lucius, they marched on the capital for the final time, eventually making their way to the castle at its center. 3 days later, on the 4th of July, year 952, the castle vanished from existence and the city was liberated. On the 4th of July. How interesting. Independence occurred on Independence Day. So that's interesting. So there's at least one other knight, the Palpatine Knight, although it may not exist anymore. And we know now that Testarossa, why it was corrupted. That's really interesting. That's... Almost like many other things in this game, though, leaves more questions than creates answers.
Are you finishing up your painting, guys?
Yeah, this is my last one. I want to make sure I'm completely satisfied with it before declaring it finished.
That's understandable. You're going to keep painting once you're back at home, though, right?
Well, I don't know how much time I'll have to set aside for it, but I intend to keep working on it, bit by bit. There's growing reason for concern in Calvert to the east of the Highlands. But all in all, things are more peaceful now than they were. I should be able to focus on painting my magnum opus.
Oh, is it going to be of Nord? If anyone can make a masterpiece of the Highlands, it'd be you.
That wouldn't be such a bad idea. But actually, I was intending to paint a picture of the Academy, its students, and the courageous.
You mean...
Now you're getting it. I want to capture the day we liberated the Academy. And once I've finished it, I fully intend to return to Erebonia with it in hand. What better way to forever memorialize this place as my second homeland?
Man, you really are amazing. Well, if you ever need reference materials, you know who to call. I can get pictures of anything you might need and send them over. I know you're talented, but that's a lot to paint off of just your memory.
I'd appreciate that.
Something on your mind, instructor?
You could say that. I've been mulling over how things are going to be come next month, but all this soul searching's giving me a headache.
Well, it'll probably feel strange being back with the guild for the first time in 2 years. But I'd bet they'll be glad to have you back. Things are probably going to be rough over there, even with you taking up the bracer life again.
No doubts there. I can already see plenty of traveling abroad in my future after what happened over in Crossbow. And I imagine it'll keep getting harder and harder for us bracers to operate here, too. What's with that sad puppy look? There's no reason for you to feel ashamed of what you've chosen to do. I'm proud to have a student like you who can stand up and make the tough choices life thrusts on us.
Thanks, instructor. I'll try to just grin and bear it for now.
Attaboy. Sticking it out through the hard times with a smile will put you on the fast track to becoming a great man. Just make sure you don't try to shoulder too much. All that'll do is turn you into a jaded grump. Everything in moderation, okay?
Thanks? I haven't joined the intelligence division, and I have no plans to. I'm gonna keep responding to their requests, but only if I'm comfortable doing what they're asking. And I can promise you, I'll never do anything that would put me in conflict with the guild or put innocents' lives at risk. I don't know what the future will bring for me, but that's the creed I want to stand by.
I know. Don't worry. No matter what happens, you'll always be my student. So go out there, live your life, and grow into such a heartthrob that I won't be able to take my eyes off you.
Well, I'll try.